I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about how I had a lovely surprise of a tax bill when I went full time um, as an entrepreneur. G'day, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Uneducated Entrepreneurs. Now, a bit of housekeeping before we get started. Firstly, last episode with Caitlin was fabulous. Thank you for all of those that have supported and the new subscribers. It's fantastic. Moving forward, Pete will still be coming on. However, when he's not on, because he's currently doing tax, which is why we didn't have a episode last week. Which on that as well, if you have missed Caitlin's episode, it'll be linked above my head. Check it out. It was a great conversation. However, Pete is still going to be here. However, when he's not, I'll just be doing a podcast every second week because, yes, I only have a small capacity to come up with ideas when it comes to podcasting and talking about business. However, for today, as I mentioned, Pete is doing tax. First, before we do that, make sure you like, share, subscribe. We appreciate the support. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about how I had a lovely surprise of a tax bill when I went full time as an entrepreneur, I guess. So, to give you a bit of preference, anytime I've done a bit of entrepreneuring, any of my businesses where I've been bringing in income, I've usually had a job that's been paying my tax. So the tax that I pay in those jobs would be offsetting the tax bill that I would get from any income that I earn through my businesses. So I thought that was the way. And leading up into, I guess not this year, last year. So the year before, I didn't pay any tax throughout the year because I just went full time, as a entrepreneur business, I guess. Went full time, and so we just earned monies with Uber Eats and everything like that. When it came to tax time, however, I was really surprised with the $3,500 tax bill, which I had put no monies aside for. It is safe to say that was a bit of a stressful time. The issue with that is I thought because I'd paid tax before going full time business, I'd paid tax with obviously some tax offset with all the businesses, and then my deductions would be taken out of the tax already paid. So that's not the case when you don't pay any tax. So if you're just starting out as a full time business and you don't know this, tax is calculated over gross amount. And then the tax that you pay is counted before So your deductions are taken before the tax you pay. So what I did is when on my last year during tax, I ended up thinking oh sweet, I did the math. I'm well, I've been able to deduct this much fuel, this much on car expenses because a lot of it was Uber Eats. I can discount this much with office stuff, various logbooks, sleeves for receipts and everything else. So I had a whole list of deductions. However, I thought those deductions were taken out of the tax owed. So say I had earned about 55, 60 grand. The tax owing on that is between about 6 and 8 grand, roughly. I thought the deductions were taken off the tax in that sense. So what I thought was all right, sweet, I should have no tax bill because I've got about 10, 12 grand worth of deductions and I only owe about 8 grand worth of tax. That is not how it works, unfortunately. The deductions get taken out of your gross. So the 10, 12 grand gets taken out of the 50, 60 grand, which means my net that I have to pay the tax on is 40 to 45 grand, which then whacked me with a lovely 3.5 grand tax bill. So it's safe to say that was a bit of a, oh, damn. And so then on top of paying that down, because if you're unaware, when you're a sole trader, you don't have to pay your tax bill until March 2025, the following year, which is very helpful for somebody that got a 3.5 grand and was not prepared for it. But yeah, so you have about 6 months depending on when you actually put your tax in. With my situation, I go to a tax accountant, which I would highly recommend. Don't try and do it yourself because you'll miss stuff and then you'll lose some of the deductions. Or you'll just incorrectly do it and then get audited and in a lot of trouble. So get it if you've got multiple streams of income coming in, get a good accountant. Pete would definitely have something different with this because he's got a bookkeeper and an accountant. Two different things. I just have a tax accountant. That's all I've got. Nothing fancy. But that's all I need because I had so various forms of income. I had the Uber. I had various incomes from uh, PT that I'd done previously. I also had like fencing or farming jobs because I did a bit of that as well. Because as you might be able to tell from the shirt, this is a fencing shirt. So I would go up to my partner's folks' farm, do some work up there, and that would all just be subcontracting. So I had these multiple streams of income that I needed to then accumulate and then be like, oh, this is how much I've earned over the years. And now this is what I've spent, like for the business, like whether that be fuel, tools, office supplies, etc. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock. So I was like, I was not thrilled to say the least when it came to tax time last year. However, since then, like obviously a little bit more savvy. I've signed up for PAYG statement installments, so I pay them every 3 months based on the rough earnings of the previous year. It does help keeping track of what you earn and what you need to survive, like expenses for fuel, etc. The other thing with that, if you're doing Uber Eats per se, I should leave my referral code down below, but we'll get into that. So there's obviously you're using your car a lot, or you can be riding a bike, depending on what you're doing. So the way tax deductions are worked is you have to keep a logbook because Uber does a lot of kilometers. Like I think this last year I've probably clocked over 100,000 Ks on the car. However, obviously within that, you've got obviously the business being Uber, and then traveling to and from, whether going up to the farm or to a client's place. Like that's all business related travel. So because I did so many kilometers, like I think there's two different ways that you can claim kilometers per se if you have a business where you're traveling a lot. Is I think you can claim up to about 5,000 Ks of business travel. Um, or you write a logbook and then they just keep account of all of your car expenses. So whether that be flat tires, like I think this last year probably changed. I got a brand new set of tires. I've changed about 3 or 4 tires. So all of that gets sort of bundled together. And then, so with a logbook, you need 3 months worth of travel, like an average. So you then take the average of business trips to private trips, work that percentage out, and then from that, you will then go and be like, well, I've, during this last financial year, 80% of my travel and use of the car was for business. And so then 80% of all of your expenses get deducted from your tax bill. Not your tax bill, your gross income, which your tax bill is then worked out after deductions. So it's not before, it's not after your tax has been worked out. That would be really great. No one would pay tax ever. But this is just sort of like the intro as for like a sole trader, as myself is, to paying tax. With that, I also keep track of I keep just like a Excel spreadsheet of office expenses, car expenses, fencing tools, any software and stuff, because a lot of my stuff is now online. So that's another thing you need to keep aware of. If you have a folder of everything that you do, I mean, it's a bit late now. We probably should have done this about 3 months earlier, but we were busy, so we didn't. But yes, for a small sole trader like business like my own, keep track of everything, all your receipts, and then like with my accountant, if you keep a spreadsheet of like roughly how much it is, you need to keep the receipts, but then it's like it's going to be so much easier come tax time when you're actually filling in your tax form to figure out what sort of deductions you can take from what you earn. Um, but yeah, so that was my little tax story nightmare. So on top of my like $3,500 tax bill that was due in March this year, I was then paying about $1,000 every quarter to sort out the pay as you go side of things, because it turns out the government does not like you paying zero tax and earning all this money, even though you're going to be able to deduct a lot. So it is a good thing to pay some tax. Try to avoid paying as much tax as you can, but do it legally and ethically. You don't want to be like, yeah, I definitely spent $3,000 on this office thing when it was just a weekend out. Like it, don't do that. You'll get found out. Um, Generally speaking, I haven't had to be audited yet, but as I'm only a small business, I think Pete's been audited. Oh, he's done internal audits. I'm not going to be able to be an authority on this because I do not know exactly. But until you get into a bigger stage with your business, you won't need to, like, there's little chance of you being audited. And then if you're keeping track of all your receipts and everything, you're doing everything by the book, you have nothing to worry about. They might even be able to find you something that's going to be beneficial for you. So that's sort of like my little tax story that I had to share. My uneducated entrepreneur self. Um, but this year we've done a lot different. We've been paying tax each quarter. Well, I now know what to expect. Like I can work out roughly my deductions, because anything like your phone and stuff, any like hardware, anything you use for your business, like get creative. And talking to a tax accountant, they can give you ideas as to what you can sort of claim, or give you like, have you thought about doing this or that with your dropping things with your tax, because it's just going to be um, yeah, like a lot easier with a tax accountant, and they'll be able to get more deductions for you, which means you have to pay less tax. But if you're smart, you've gone and established your business whilst you've had a job. Yes, it's a lot of work, but having a job that pays you tax and super. That's the other thing. Sorry, side note. I'll come back to the super actually. Yes, if you've just started out on a business, so if you're just at the beginning, one, you've come to the right place, welcome. But two, like if you're still in a job, you're going to have better returns on your tax per se, depending on how well your business is done. Um, so yeah, just be mindful of that. I need to stop picking up this pen. Um, that it can get tricky when you're just earning for a business. But once you have a tax accountant, it's very easy to do. So I would highly recommend doing that. So that was my little tax story. But I did say I was going to mention super. So with super, if you are your own boss, try and put aside a portion of your super, because at the end of the day, businesses are great to be worked with and to own and everything else like that. However, if you forget about the super side of things, unless you're going to be doing that business for the rest of your life, ideally you don't want to, because you get tired, you get older, and you're like, I just don't want to anymore. If you're not paying super into your various super funds, not various, your selected super fund, um, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot per se, unfortunately, because at the end of the day, like the beauty about compound interest, I think we mentioned this somewhere, three or fourth episode in, compound interest is ridiculous. Like if you only start putting super in 10 years before you retire, like you're going to potentially be losing $200,000 to $300,000 worth of profit and income, which we don't want you to do. Like we want you to obviously do the best you can with your finances and get into the right situation. And with everything like inflation, grocery prices going up, fuel prices going up, yes, it's very tricky at the moment over in Australia. Like I guess the best thing to remember is it's only for a season. Yes, it could seem like it's going forever, but if you plan properly, you make sure you've got a couple of eggs lined up that you can sort of go to for your business. You're not going to be caught out in the cold um, without any income or finances coming in, especially if you've got, recently bought a house. I know Pete, which is why he's been all over the shop. He's just moved into his place. So it'd be interesting next week because he did say that he will be back next week. Side note, if he isn't, I'll be back in 2 weeks. But then, if he is, I'll be obviously here. However, yeah. So since he's moved, it'll be interesting to see if he's accounted for all these interest rate hikes and everything else that's going on. Because I think the RBA was saying that they're now going to increase the interest rate. They're increasing something by 50 points. Clearly, I haven't researched into it. So that is then going to make it even like put more pressure onto people paying mortgage, or they're only just getting by. Like things are just going to keep getting more expensive, unfortunately. But having a solid base of income coming in, an idea of like an emergency fund, like we've talked about before, just getting things lined up, like if you want to be really smart, if you've saved up a bunch of money just for one of these situations, because as you may have heard or seen, the stock market is also crashing. Um, it's just like on a constant downward spiral. I'm not going to go into specifics because I haven't done the research for you, so I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about on a high level. However, I am aware that a lot of people that are now very well off made money in their last 2008, 2009 recession, where everything just crashed. And so, but they had cash flow ready to go. And so then dollar cost averaging in, like this is once again not financial advice. This is purely my opinion and what I've seen other people doing. But if you've got like a lump sum of cash sitting off to the side, dollar cost averaging in over the next year or 2 years, depending on how long this takes to blow over, will essentially set you up for retirement. So it's just making sure that you've got a lot of different avenues lined up. So you've got investments, you've got work, 1, 2, or 3 jobs. You might even have a business or a side hustle that you're working on. Just like being creative on like how you can bring in extra money, because money's still going to be out there. It just may not seem like it because everyone's holding them to the pennies because everything's getting more expensive. Um, but I mean, that'd be sort of like some of the best businesses are bought out of a recession because it's like, well, we were dealing with a very low market. Like there was no interest. However, we were able to become successful because of X, Y, Z. I wish I could tell you what X, Y, Z is, but I do not know myself. It just takes a lot of trial and error and figuring out what solution you can provide for a problem of a large population, which is the essence of any business at the end of the day, is what problems can you solve with a skill or um, particular knack in, like whether it be blogs, websites, like mowing lawns, cleaning gardens, like baking, whatever it be. Like there's always going to be a need for those sort of services, and then just trying to not get so, I guess, run down and caught up in the hype that the not the hype, like almost the fear that the media is bringing about the recession. Yes, it is a scary time. However, like there's ways around this. Like you can get through it. Like it's going to be tough, and there will be some people that do suffer. But if you've got the right mindset on where you want to go and where you want to see yourself, look at the big picture of things. It's going to be tight for maybe a couple of years, but if you can, strategically set up different avenues of income or future income, then at the end of the day, like you'll be better off. So yeah, I mean, it is a scary time. Side note, just on top of that, in light of everything that's been going on, we have also actually started up quite a few other businesses. I think I briefly mentioned it with Caitlin. So what's been happening with me is I will be starting like a web design agency per se, not agency. Basically, be doing web designs. I'm in the middle of lining that all up, getting that sorted. I'm also branching into doing more uh, things that I love, like coffee, surfing, like that sort of thing. Like with the Coffee Surf website that we've actually did through, like we set up on the last few podcasts, that will be like we'll just bring in another sort of form of income. Like I'm pretty much just like shooting my shot in different fields, which can be tiring and not always the smartest. But that is why I've sort of decided that it'll be every week with Pete if he's on, but when he's not, it'll just be every second week, just so that one I can focus on the other businesses that I've got going on, as well as the businesses that I already have and are still to make money with. Don't worry, I will be sure to let everyone know uh, what is happening with the businesses when anything exciting happens. At the moment, we're just starting a few new businesses, got a couple of ideas starting out. So, stay tuned for more exciting business talk, I guess. Once again, if you missed last week's episode, not last week's, last fortnight's episode with Caitlin, a brief thing. She is 23-year-old into the fashion industry. She's taken it by storm. She's been there for 5 years, and she's bought a culture, which we will be talking about more with Pete, probably in the next month or two, probably. Don't quote me on that, because who knows what's going to be happening in the next month or two. Yeah, so basically she's taken the fashion industry by storm. She set up her own agency, well, switched from a talent to an agency back about 2 months ago. And the last episode was just about getting to know her a bit more, like why she decided to get into fashion, why she loves it. And then we'll go into the more nitty gritty of the business in our later podcast with Pete, because he'll have a lot more questions revolved around the business, the running side of it, the staff, the culture, well and truly. It makes it difficult for me to decide what culture it is, because as I said in that episode, it's just me, myself, and I, which is fine. Like we are actually looking at potentially. I was talking to my partner just the other day. We're like, we need to sort of figure out how we can outsource some of the stuff, just because I've decided to take on so much more. Like it's making sure you don't throw out the work-life balance too much. And so we were discussing sort of how we can go about outsourcing different projects or like jobs to other people that obviously will be getting paid. So if you're interested in that at all, let me know. Just send us a message down below, and we'll be in touch. But it's just a short one for today, guys. Just for tax, yeah. Remember, tax is worked out on your gross, and then you have to pay tax on like after deductions are taken. So if you earn 50 or 60 grand with your business, and then you take out your deductions, it'll be 10, 15, 20 grand. Your tax will be worked out from that 35, 40, 45 grand mark. And you want to be putting monies aside. Like it's very easy to set up if you haven't already. You can just go onto your MyGov and set up PAYG installments, and then they'll just go off your last, I guess, tax. Oh, there's a name for it. It's like income assessment. I think that's what they call it. They'll work it off your income assessment from the previous year, so last year. And then each quarter, you'll just be paying about a quarter of what that is. And hopefully your business will grow, and that'll just offset some of the tax that you do have to have. Like having a tax bill means you're doing something right. It means you're making more money than you did last year. If you have little to no tax bill, great, awesome. Even all you big rich millionaires, they still have a tax bill. It just seems insignificant compared to your average Joe, because they have a lot of tax loops that they can take advantage of, which I would love to say that I know what all those tax loops are to give you an idea of what you could possibly look into. I am not properly equipped to be able to give that advice. So it's not even advice; it's just my opinion. Like at the end of the day, we're all on uneducated entrepreneurs. We're uneducated. We have just we're just telling you our story from different points of view and what we found has worked, hasn't worked, and what's kind of like been like, oh, that's a thing for me being tax. So stay tuned for next week because Peter will be back on. There'll be a lot to talk about. New house, what's been going on with the business, because I think he's switched up what he's doing with the business as well once again since we last spoke to him. And then, yeah, we'll probably talk a little bit more about tax and what we've got planned for the rest of the year. So until next week, guys, you have a great week. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification. We are going to try and do splits of what I've just talked about onto our TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We did that with Caitlin last week. It seemed to work. So if you hear from that, welcome. And we just want to provide the best business information that we can for you guys. So if you have any questions or like things you want to hear about from our perspective, Pete with his brick and mortar, mine with my online business, let me know. And let me know. Send us a message down below. Leave a comment. We'll get to it and we'll address it next week. So until then, guys, have a great week and we will talk to you then. Thanks.